Part 2, the Pierre Hedary, the full story of a crazy person. Anyway, I was about 19 years old, 18 years old, 19 years old, and I was really struggling in school with my grades and working for Terry, my friend who was a used car dealer. Terry bought and sold a lot of Mercedes, and admittedly it was probably my fault for misleading Terry into letting him think that I knew more about the cars than I did. So, you know, there's a little bit of blame to be had on my part as well, faking it a little bit. And faking it till I made it was probably one of the worst personality traits I developed, but thank God it never necessarily caught up with me. I was able to sort of get myself under control and read more and study more so that I actually could say that I had a clue about what I was doing. So when I was in college, I made a little bit of money working on people's Mercedes at my house. I made a little bit of money working in them at my dad's shop. I had about 20 customers. And I wouldn't say I was making a fortune, but I knew how to do things like adjust valves or swap an engine or replace shifter bushings or, you know, do brake repairs or, you know, water pumps, belts. We did a couple of cylinder head jobs, and for me it was very interesting because I didn't really particularly care for classroom work. Now, I knew I had worked so hard to get into school and pay for school that I decided that I was going to go forward and make sure I graduated. So I graduated in spring of 2006, 1 year early, and I had a Bachelor of Science in Psychology, a minor in French, and I was very close to having a minor in statistics, but I couldn't quite make it happen. So the next thing that happened was that I needed a job, and I was trying to eke out a living working on these cars, but my advisor in the team performance lab, Sandra, told me I really needed to pick between having a career in psychology or working on the stinky, smelly cars that I had such an affinity for. And I chose the latter. My grandpa said I should do both, and I really probably should have, but I couldn't. There was just too little interest for me in the field of psychology. And so after I got out of the psych program and I graduated and everything, I had this customer named Nick, and Nick had a barn in the woods in Avalon Park. So I rented half of this 800 square foot barn for $250 a month. And I would drive out there every day about 34 miles a day in my old 220 diesel, and I'd work on people's cars. And the economy was not great in Florida in 2006. There was not a lot of extra money, and it was getting worse. And so I had no way to really earn the money I needed to. I ended up sleeping on my parents' couch. It was kind of a reckless sort of life where I slept in my car a lot. I would work all night. I did whatever I could to learn more about the cars and make my customers happy, but I had to keep my labor rate at $30 an hour because otherwise I wouldn't have any business. And at the time, nobody knew who I was, except I would comment on the forums sometimes. I was also not a very good typer, so I looked like an illiterate moron since my posts were full of spelling and grammar errors. So, you know, that's about all I could ask for, $30 an hour or whatever. But I caught my first big break when I was 21. My friend Dr. Rafael Alzamora brought his 300 SEL to me that needed air suspension work. And I didn't really know that much about the air suspension, but I knew enough to know that the valves should not leak. So I worked on the car for 3 months, replacing valve after valve after valve, testing the valves, checking the valves for issues, and I finally got where I needed to get and got the car to level properly and run like it was supposed to. So in 2008, I got into a situation with Nick, my landlord, where he had some issues with drugs. Don't abuse prescription meds. They will wreck your life. And Nick turned very violent and attempted to ram his carpet cleaning truck into my 220D one day while I was leaving the building. And so I didn't like the fact that Nick was getting so crazy. So my friend Tex helped me carry all of my stuff out of there. And I remember Tex guarding the scene while I loaded all my stuff into the trunk of his 240D. Thank you, Tex. I have not forgotten what you did for me. And we managed to get everything out. I worked at Tex's place for a month and out of the trunk of my car, and then I found the shop in Titusville. And while I'd like to say the rest is history, I'll tell part 3 and part 4 later on in another video. But that was how Pierre Hedary ended up in Titusville, Florida, working on Mercedes. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Please leave your comments below, tap the bell for notifications, and think about supporting us in Patreon. We're always there to answer questions for our Patreon subscribers. And in the meantime, enjoy driving your Mercedes Benz and share your Mercedes story with us below.